Shivering for days in a storm that could strip the flesh from bone, Kale thought he was at the end of his story. His exosuit's alarms were screaming. His food was almost gone, and the alien wasteland had turned against him. But then, through the blizzard, he stumbled upon something no human was meant to find. A nest. 5 tiny hatchlings, pale as moonlight, their translucent skin glowing faintly in the storm's gloom. Albino creatures unlike anything in the colony's records. They were helpless, abandoned, dying. Ethan wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. Just a scavenger trying to make it through one more day. Yet the moment he heard their strange, low hum, like sorrow itself echoing in his chest, his life took a turn that would shock the galaxy. Because when survival demanded he leave them behind, he chose to stay. Before we dive deeper, if you love powerful HFY sci-fi stories, where ordinary humans rise to legendary heights, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss the next tale, and share this video with a friend who needs a dose of wonder today. Trust me, this story of survival, sacrifice, and alien hatchlings will leave you speechless. The storm had raged for 3 days straight, a white wall of fury swallowing everything in its path. Kale pushed forward, each step a battle against winds sharp enough to cut skin. His exosuit's visor was fogged, alarms blaring yellow warnings, temperature critical, oxygen reserves thinning, energy cells draining faster than they could recharge. He pressed his back against a jagged rock face, breath ragged, chest heaving. The blizzard howled like an endless scream. Day and night no longer mattered. Everything was the same blinding white. Ethan's food rations had dwindled to crumbs. His water recycler was failing. For the first time in years, he wondered if this was how it ended, not in a heroic battle, but frozen and forgotten on a nameless ridge of Glee Forbe. Turning back wasn't an option. The scanners had picked up faint life signs days earlier, and curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, had driven him deeper into the storm. He thought he'd find wreckage, maybe frozen bodies. But now, shivering, half delirious, he realized the truth. He wasn't just searching anymore. Something was pulling him forward, toward those fragile signals beneath the snow. And that something was about to change everything. The signal had been faint, almost a mistake, just a flicker on his scanner, like a heartbeat buried under ice. Ethan trudged forward, expecting wreckage from an old survey craft or maybe a glitch from the storm's interference. But when he scraped away the hardened snow with trembling gloves, what he found froze him in place more than the cold ever could. A nest. 5 tiny shapes huddled together in a hollow pocket of ice, their bodies translucent, almost glowing in the dim stormlight. Their skin shimmered faintly like glass touched by moonlight. Their eyes, large, liquid silver, blinked at him with fragile confusion. They weren't documented in any of the outpost xenobiology records. Too scaled to be mammals, too delicate to be reptiles. Hatchlings. Ethan's first instinct was brutal honesty with himself. Walk away. He barely had enough food to survive another day. His suit was failing. What chance did he have keeping alien infants alive in the middle of a storm? But then, they made a sound. Not a cry, not a scream. A low, vibrating hum that shook in his chest like grief itself. It wasn't just noise. It was a plea. And against all reason, Ethan stayed. The hum filled the hollow like a heartbeat, low and steady, rattling deep in Ethan's bones. It wasn't language, not in the way humans spoke, but it carried something raw. A need, a sorrow. He crouched closer, visor fogging as his breath quickened. The hatchlings pressed against one another, trembling, their silver eyes fixed on him. Ethan had seen strange things in the galaxy, fungal forests that glowed like fire, machines older than human memory. But this cut straight through the armor he'd built around himself, because that sound reminded him of Earth, of nights when the heat in their shelter ran out, when his mother had rocked him until exhaustion broke her, of the silence after she was gone, of his father, lost to wars that never ended, loneliness. That was the hum's echo, and Ethan knew it too well. He could have walked away, told himself they weren't his problem. But the storm howled outside, the hatchling shivered inside, and he realized he was staring at a choice that would haunt him forever. He reached into his survival kit, pulled out a ration tube, and melted snow with shaking hands. He fed them. That night, Ethan became theirs. The second night, Ethan knew the storm wasn't ending anytime soon. His suit's thermal regulator failed completely, flashing a final red warning before shutting down. The cold bit through him like knives, but when he looked at the nest, at the 5 fragile lives pressed together, he forced himself to act. He dug into the snowbank, carving out a shallow cavern with his plasma cutter. He reinforced the walls with shards of wreckage scavenged from the ice field, a broken hull panel here, twisted struts there. Piece by piece, he built a pocket of survival, a fragile sanctuary against the storm's endless rage. Inside, he set his portable heater, its weak glow fighting the frost. The hatchlings clustered around it, their humming softer now, more like a lullaby than a cry. At night, they curled against his chest plate, scales cool against his body, their breaths fogging the air. Ethan shivered violently, sometimes convinced he wouldn't wake up the next morning. But each time he opened his eyes, those silver gazes met his. Silent, trusting, depending. The shelter wasn't much. It was fragile, temporary, but within it, Ethan realized something dangerous. Leaving them behind was no longer possible. Days blurred together inside the fragile shelter. The storm roared above, but in the hollow beneath the snow, a fragile rhythm of survival took shape. Ethan scavenged what little he could. Scraps of frozen fungal growths, insectoid husks trapped in ice, and the last drips of nutrient paste from his rations. The hatchlings always ate first. Ethan crushed everything into a slurry they could swallow, feeding them carefully while his own stomach clawed in protest. Sometimes his meal was nothing but bitter lichen chewed into pulp. Sometimes nothing at all. Hunger gnawed at him, sharp and constant, but every time he looked at the hatchlings, tiny chests rising and falling, faint hums whispering in the dark, his resolve hardened. One grew bolder, snapping playfully at his fingers with needle-like teeth. Another refused to leave the warmth of his palm, until coaxed gently. 2 twined together like siblings who could not bear to be apart. And then the smallest. Its hum was faint, barely audible, and Ethan feared it would not survive. Still, he stayed. Still, he fed them. The storm starved him, but the hatchlings bound him. And in that desperate trade, Ethan discovered something terrifying. Their lives now mattered more than his own. On the 4th day, Ethan noticed something strange. The bold hatchling, the one always first to explore, struggled upright, trembling, and stretched its small body. That's when he saw them. Wings, thin, almost transparent, folded so tightly against its scales he hadn't noticed before. They shimmered faintly in the heater's glow as a hatchling flapped once, twice, before stumbling and collapsing back into the nest. It let out a frustrated hum, sharp enough to rattle the walls. The others stirred in response, their tones rising together like a choir. Ethan stayed, breath caught. These weren't reptiles, not insects, not anything the outpost records could explain. They were something far more. Dragons. The thought was ridiculous, and yet there it was. Pale, alien dragons, fragile now but destined for something greater. The way their silver eyes locked on him, the way their hum seemed almost deliberate, it was as if they recognized him, as if, in their tiny minds, he wasn't just a stranger who stumbled upon their nest. He was their guardian. The storm still raged outside, but inside the hollow, something else was growing. Strength, trust, and a bond Ethan hadn't thought possible. By the 6th day, the storm had revealed its other danger. Ethan was out scavenging again, body weak from hunger, when his scanner pinged movement. For a moment, his heart leapt. Could it be their mother? The thought of returning the hatchlings to their parent filled him with desperate hope. But what emerged from the snow was no savior. It slithered across the ice like a living nightmare, armored ridges glinting black, a serpent's body crowned with a wolf-like head. Its jaws unhinged wide enough to swallow him whole, teeth shining like shards of obsidian. Red eyes glowed faintly through the snow, locking onto him. Ethan froze, blood running cold. The creature wasn't just wandering. It was following something, the hatchling's hum. Panic stabbed through him. Behind him, buried beneath the fragile shelter, 5 tiny lives waited. He had no weapon fit for this. Only a plasma cutter, meant for mining, and a flare gun. Tools, not weapons. The beast hissed, breath thrusting the air. It lunged, snow exploding around it. Ethan fired the flare straight into its gaping maw. The flash blinded it for a heartbeat, but only a heartbeat. The real fight had begun, The flares burst lit the storm like lightning, but the predator barely staggered. With a roar that shook the ground, it swung its massive head, hurling Ethan across the ice. His ribs cracked against frozen stone, pain lancing through his chest. Gasping, half-blind, he scrambled to his feet. Behind him, the shelter hid 5 helpless hatchlings. He couldn't let the beast reach them. Activating his plasma cutter, he charged. Sparks hissed as he slashed across the creature's flank, burning deep into alien flesh. Black blood spilled, steaming against the snow. The monster reeled but did not fall. It lunged again, teeth snapping inches from his face. Ethan braced for the end, until he heard it, a piercing hum. The bold hatchling crawled out of the nest, wings flaring wide. Its hum cut sharp through the storm. One by one, the others joined, their tones weaving together into a chorus that vibrated the air itself. The sound rattled the predator, staggering its movements. Seizing the moment, Ethan drove the plasma cutter into its glowing eye. The creature shrieked, convulsed, and collapsed into the snow, steam rising from its wounds. Silence returned. Ethan, broken and bleeding, looked at the hatchlings. They had fought with him. The predator's body steamed in the snow, its lifeblood seeping into the ice. Ethan collapsed to his knees, clutching his side. Every breath was agony. Hunger gnawed at him. His vision swam, and the storm still raged above. He knew the truth. His body was failing. He staggered back into the shelter, where the hatchlings huddled close. Their silver eyes shone brighter now, their hum soft and steady. They weren't helpless anymore. They had fought beside him. Survivors, like him. And yet, a brutal thought cut through his haze. He could leave. If he abandoned them now, he might still limp back to the outpost, find rescue, save himself. The hatchlings were alien, unknown. Their survival wasn't his responsibility. Every logical reason screamed at him to walk away. But then, the smallest one, the frail hatchling whose hum was barely audible, dragged itself across the nest. It pressed against his trembling hand, eyes reflecting his own brokenness. Its hum was faint, but steady. Ethan's throat tightened. He couldn't. He wouldn't. If death came, it would come with him still shielding them. His choice was final. Ethan Kale, scavenger, loner, nobody, was now their guardian, even if it killed him. That on the 10th day, the storm finally broke. The cloud cracked open, and pale sunlight spilled across the frozen ridges, painting the ice in shades of gold. Ethan could barely stand. His body was frail from hunger. His ribs ached. His breath came shallow. But when he stepped outside the shelter, the hatchlings followed, no longer trembling. Their eyes glowed with a strange brilliance, their wings unfolding with tentative strength. He watched as the bold one tested the wind, lifting for a heartbeat before tumbling back into the snow. The others hummed in encouragement, their tones rising like a promise. Ethan smiled weakly, pride warming him more than the sun. Somewhere, someday, these creatures would soar. And if anyone asked, the galaxy would remember that they had lived because one starving, shivering human had chosen not to abandon them. Ethan Kale hadn't just survived the storm. He had become a legend. Clapperboard. And that's the story of Ethan Kale, the scavenger who defied the storm and saved the albino hatchlings. What began as desperation in the cold became a tale that echoed across the stars. If you enjoyed this HFY sci-fi story, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves discovering the legendary resilience of humanity. Because sometimes one human choice can change a galaxy.